The morning sun reflected off the massive glass windows of Diamond Auto Gallery, making the luxury cars inside sparkle like jewels. Raymond stepped out of his modest sedan and stood for a moment just looking at the building. This was it. After months of secret negotiations and paperwork, he finally owned this place. But nobody here knew that yet. At 41 years old, Raymond had worked his way up from nothing. He'd started with one small property, then another, and over 15 years had built a real estate empire. Now he was expanding into new territory. He'd bought this luxury car dealership 2 weeks ago, but he'd kept his identity hidden during the purchase. He wanted to see how things really worked here before anyone knew who he was. Raymond checked his reflection in the car window. Jeans, a comfortable hoodie, and sneakers. Nothing fancy. He looked like any regular guy off the street, which was exactly the point. He wanted the real experience, the truth of how this business treated its customers when they thought nobody important was watching. The automatic doors slid open with a soft whoosh. Inside, the showroom was impressive. The floors were polished marble that clicked under his shoes. Sleek sports cars in red, black, and silver sat under perfect lighting. Well-dressed salespeople moved between customers, their voices low and professional. Classical music played softly in the background. Everything screamed money and class. Raymond walked slowly past a gorgeous silver sports car, running his fingers along the smooth paint. The price tag caught his eye. $250,000. He whistled low. These weren't just cars. They were status symbols, excuse me. The voice came from behind him, sharp and cold. Raymond turned to see a man in an expensive gray suit walking toward him. The man was probably in his early 50s, with perfectly styled hair and a watch that cost more than most people's cars. His name tag read manager. "Can I help you with something?" the manager asked. But his tone said he wasn't really asking. It was more like he was questioning why Raymond was there at all. "Yeah, actually," Raymond said with a friendly smile. "I'm interested in looking at some of your premium vehicles. Maybe taking a test drive." The manager looked him up and down slowly. His eyes traveled from Raymond's sneakers to his hoodie, and his expression changed. The professional mask slipped, replaced by something uglier. Suspicion, contempt. "Sir, are you aware of the price range we're dealing with here?" The manager's voice had gotten even colder. "These vehicles start at $200,000. Most are considerably more than that." Raymond kept his cool. "I understand. That's why I'm here." "I see." The manager glanced around the showroom. A few other customers had started to notice their conversation. An older couple in designer clothes stood near a convertible, watching. Two businessmen by the sports cars had paused their discussion. "And you're looking to purchase today?" "I'm looking to explore my options," Raymond replied calmly. "Maybe discuss some of the models you have, learn about the business." "I'm very interested in what you have here." That seemed to be the wrong answer. The manager's jaw tightened. "Sir, I don't think you understand. This isn't a tourist attraction. We cater to a very specific clientele, people who can actually afford these vehicles." He said the word "actually" like it was an insult. Raymond felt his stomach tighten, but he kept his voice steady. "I'm a serious customer. I'd like to speak with someone about your inventory." "A serious customer," the manager repeated, and there was no mistaking the mockery in his voice now. Several salespeople had stopped what they were doing to watch. "Sir, do you have any idea what the insurance alone costs on these cars? The maintenance? These aren't regular vehicles." "I'm aware of that," Raymond said. His hands clenched slightly at his sides, but he maintained his composure. This was exactly what he'd suspected might happen, but experiencing it was different from imagining it. The manager stepped closer, lowering his voice but not enough that others couldn't hear. "Look, I'm trying to be polite here. You're clearly in the wrong place. We have other locations that might be more suitable for your budget. Perhaps you'd be more comfortable looking at our used car lot across town." The words hit like a slap. Raymond looked around the showroom. Every face that wasn't white belonged to someone cleaning, someone carrying supplies, someone in a service uniform. The customers, the salespeople, the finance people visible through the glass offices, all cut from the same cloth. And none of them looked like him. "I'm not leaving," Raymond said quietly. "I'm a potential customer, and I have every right to be here." The manager's face flushed red. "Sir, you need to leave now. You're disrupting my business and making my real customers uncomfortable." "I am a real customer. Security." The manager's voice rang out across the marble floors. The classical music suddenly seemed too loud. Every conversation in the showroom had stopped. Everyone was staring. Two security guards appeared from somewhere in the back. They were both big guys, looking uncomfortable with the situation but following orders. The manager pointed at Raymond like he was some kind of criminal. "Escort this gentleman out of the building. He's trespassing." "I'm not trespassing," Raymond protested, but the guards were already moving toward him. "I walked in through the front door like everyone else." "Sir, please come with us," one of the guards said, not unkindly but firmly. He took Raymond's arm. Raymond could have told them right then. Could have pulled out his phone and shown them the ownership papers. Could have ended the manager's career in that moment. But something stopped him. He needed to see this through. Needed to understand exactly what he was dealing with. As the guards walked him toward the door, Raymond looked back. The manager stood there with his arms crossed, satisfaction written all over his face. The other customers had already gone back to their shopping, the interruption forgotten. Another salesperson was laughing quietly with a colleague. The glass doors closed behind him with a soft click, shutting him out of his own business. Raymond stood in the parking lot, his heart pounding with anger and humiliation. But underneath that, something else was growing. A determination he'd felt many times before in his life. Every time someone had told him he didn't belong somewhere, couldn't achieve something, wasn't good enough. He pulled out his phone and dialed his lawyer. When she answered, he said just 5 words. "We need to talk. Today." As he walked back to his car, Raymond didn't look back at the gleaming showroom, but he was already planning his next move. The manager thought he'd won. He thought he'd protected his precious showroom from someone who didn't fit his idea of what a customer should look like. He had no idea that he'd just made the biggest mistake of his entire career. Raymond sat in his lawyer's office an hour later, still feeling the sting of humiliation. Lisa Chen had been his attorney for 8 years, handling everything from his first property deal to this latest acquisition. She listened without interrupting as he described what happened at the showroom, her expression growing darker with each detail. When he finished, she leaned back in her chair and let out a long breath. "Raymond, this is exactly why we kept your identity hidden during the purchase. We suspected something like this might be going on, but suspecting and knowing are 2 different things. So what do I do now?" Raymond asked. "Part of me wants to march back in there right now and fire everyone." "You could do that," Lisa said, pulling out a legal pad. "But then you'd never know how deep this problem goes. Right now you have an opportunity. You can see the truth of how that business operates when they think nobody's watching." Raymond nodded slowly. She was right. If he revealed himself now, everything would change. People would pretend, hide, cover their tracks. He needed to see the real picture. Over the next 3 days, Raymond put together a plan. He called in favors from friends and business associates. The goal was simple but telling. He would send different people into Diamond Auto Gallery, all interested in buying the same type of car, all dressed similarly, all with the money to make a purchase. The only difference would be how they looked. Tuesday morning, his friend Derek went in. Derek was a successful accountant, dressed in jeans and a casual shirt just like Raymond had been. Derek was white. Raymond watched from his car across the street as Derek spent 45 minutes inside. When Derek came out, he was shaking his head. "Man, they treated me like royalty," Derek said, climbing into Raymond's car. "The manager himself came over, offered me coffee, gave me a full tour. They pulled up a chair, showed me financing options, and offered me a test drive in 3 different cars. I didn't even have to ask." Wednesday, Raymond sent in his business partner, Carlos. Carlos dressed the same way, in comfortable clothes, nothing fancy. He was Hispanic, spoke perfect English, and owned 2 restaurants in the city. Carlos came out after 20 minutes, frustration written all over his face. "They barely looked at me," Carlos reported. "One salesperson asked if I was looking for the service department. When I said I wanted to buy a car, they showed me the cheapest models in the back corner and kept checking their watch like I was wasting their time." Thursday brought the most telling test. Raymond asked his colleague Angela to visit. Angela was a surgeon, one of the most successful in the city. She wore casual clothes and brought her husband Kevin, who was a lawyer. They were both black. They stayed inside for exactly 12 minutes. "Raymond, I've never felt so unwelcome in my life," Angela said afterward, her voice tight with anger. "They didn't offer us anything. No coffee, no greeting from the manager. One salesperson asked if we were sure we could afford to even look at these cars. Kevin asked to see the sports car in the window, and they actually laughed. Said that model wasn't for everyone. Raymond felt sick. This wasn't just one bad day or one prejudiced manager. This was a pattern, a system, but he didn't stop there. Back in his office, Raymond spent hours going through the dealership's records. He'd gotten full access to everything as the new owner, and what he found made his blood boil. Over the past 5 years, the customer base was overwhelmingly white. Not because the city was overwhelmingly white, it wasn't, but because of how people were treated when they walked through those doors. He found complaint letters that had been filed away and ignored. One from a black family who'd been followed around the showroom by security. Another from an Asian couple who'd been quoted prices 20% higher than the listed amounts. A Hispanic man who'd been told they didn't really want to do business with his type when he tried to negotiate. Every single complaint had been directed at the same person, the manager, and every single complaint had been dismissed by the previous owners without investigation. Raymond dug deeper into the employment records. The sales team was 10 people, all white. The finance department had 5 people, all white. The management, all white. Meanwhile, every single person in the maintenance crew, the cleaning staff, and the service department was a person of color. It was like looking at a picture from 60 years ago, not a modern business. Then Raymond found something else. Financial irregularities in the manager's accounts. Payments to suppliers that seemed inflated. Expenses that didn't quite add up. The manager had been there for 15 years and he'd gotten comfortable. Too comfortable. He thought he was untouchable. Friday afternoon, Raymond met with Lisa and his business partner, David. They spread all the evidence across the conference table. Photos from the test visits, copies of the ignored complaints, financial records with suspicious entries highlighted in yellow, the employment records showing the stark divide. David was quiet for a long time, just looking at everything. Finally, he spoke. This isn't just about one bad manager, Raymond. This is the whole culture of the place. If you're going to fix this, you can't just fire one person. You have to rebuild everything. I know, Raymond said. That's exactly what I plan to do. Lisa pulled out her laptop. Before you do anything, you need a solid plan. You can't just walk in there angry. You need to be smart about this. They spent the next 3 hours mapping it out. Every step, every change, every person who would be affected. Raymond wasn't just thinking about punishment. He was thinking about transformation. He wanted to turn Diamond Auto Gallery into what it should have been all along. A place where talent mattered more than skin color. Where customers were judged by their character. Not their appearance, but first there would be a reckoning. The manager who'd kicked him out, who'd humiliated him in front of dozens of people, who'd built a culture of discrimination, he was about to learn a hard lesson. Raymond looked at the calendar on his phone. Monday morning, that's when he'd go back. But this time he wouldn't be going as a customer being judged. He'd be going as the owner, and he'd be the one doing the judging. Set up a mandatory meeting for Monday at 9 a.m., Raymond told Lisa. All department heads, all senior staff. Tell them it's about the dealership's future. Should I tell them who called the meeting? Lisa asked. Raymond smiled, but there was no humor in it. No, let it be a surprise. I think the manager especially is going to want to be sitting down when he finds out who really owns the place now. As Raymond drove home that evening, he thought about that moment in the showroom. The way the manager had looked at him with such contempt. The way the guards had escorted him out like he was nothing. The way other customers had stared and then forgotten him the moment the doors closed. That manager thought he'd protected his precious showroom. Thought he'd done his job by keeping out someone who didn't look like he belonged. He had no idea that in 3 days, his entire world was about to come crashing down, and Raymond was going to make sure he had a front row seat to watch it happen. Monday morning came with clear skies and a crisp breeze. Raymond sat in his car outside Diamond Auto Gallery at 8:45, watching employees arrive for work. The manager pulled up in a black luxury sedan, his third coffee of the morning in hand, completely unaware that his life was about to change forever. Raymond had spent the weekend preparing. Not just documents and evidence, but mentally preparing himself. This wasn't about revenge. This was about making things right. About building something better from the ashes of something broken. At 8:55, Raymond walked across the parking lot with Lisa and David flanking him. He wore a sharp navy suit today, his shoes polished to a mirror shine. He looked every inch the successful businessman he was. The same glass doors that had closed behind him in humiliation now opened before him with purpose. The receptionist looked up, confused. "Sir, the showroom doesn't open until—" "We're here for the meeting," Lisa said calmly. "Conference room." They walked past the gleaming cars, past the surprised early arriving staff, and into the conference room at the back. Through the glass walls, Raymond could see employees gathering, whispering to each other. Nobody knew what this meeting was about. The mystery had been intentional. By 9 o'clock, 12 people sat around the long table. The manager sat near the head, looking annoyed at having his morning disrupted. The sales team leaders were there, fidgeting with their phones. The finance director, the service manager, the assistant manager, all looking confused and slightly nervous. Then Raymond walked in, and the room fell silent. The manager's face went through several emotions in rapid succession. Confusion first, as he tried to place where he'd seen Raymond before, then recognition, his eyes widening, then horror, the color draining from his face as the pieces clicked together. His coffee cup paused halfway to his mouth. "Good morning," Raymond said, standing at the head of the table. His voice was calm, controlled, powerful. "For those who don't know me, my name is Raymond Mitchell. 2 weeks ago, I became the owner of Diamond Auto Gallery." The room erupted in whispers. People turned to each other, shocked. The manager's cup clattered onto the table, coffee sloshing over the side. He looked like he might be sick. "Last Monday," Raymond continued, "I came to this dealership as a customer. I was interested in your cars, interested in seeing how this business operates. I was dressed casually because I wanted the real experience. The truth," he paused, letting his words sink in. "What I got was discrimination." You could hear a pin drop. Several people shifted uncomfortably in their seats. One of the younger salespeople looked genuinely shocked, leaning forward as if he couldn't believe what he was hearing. Raymond described the incident methodically. Every detail, every dismissive word, every assumption made about him based on nothing but his appearance. As he spoke, he watched the manager sink lower in his chair, his face going from white to red to white again. "But I didn't come back immediately," Raymond said, "because I needed to know if this was just one bad day, or if this was something deeper." He nodded to David, who pulled up a presentation on the screen behind them. The first slide showed photos. Derek, Carlos, Angela, and Kevin, all the people who'd visited the dealership last week. These 4 people came here with the same goal: to buy a luxury car. They all had the money. They all dressed the same way. The only difference was how they looked. Raymond clicked through the slides showing the stark differences in treatment. The timeline of Derek's 45-minute VIP experience. Carlos being brushed off in 20 minutes. Angela and Kevin being laughed at and asked to leave after 12 minutes. Several people around the table looked uncomfortable now. The assistant manager's hand covered her mouth. One of the sales leaders was staring at the table, unable to meet anyone's eyes. "Let me show you something else," Raymond said. The next slide showed customer demographics from the past 5 years. The numbers told a story that couldn't be denied. In a city where 40% of the population was non-white, less than 5% of Diamond Auto Gallery's customers were minorities. Then came the complaints. Raymond read them aloud one by one. Each one detailed discrimination, disrespect, and outright prejudice. And each one had been ignored, filed away, dismissed as unimportant. The manager's signature was on every dismissal letter. "This is who we've been," Raymond said, his voice heavy with disappointment. "A business that judges people by their appearance instead of their character. That turns away customers based on skin color instead of their ability to pay." He pulled up the employment records. The visual was damning, a clear divide between who got to sell cars and who got to clean them. Who made decisions and who took orders. The manager finally found his voice, though it came out as a croak. "Mr. Mitchell, I can explain." "No," Raymond cut him off firmly. "You can't explain this. There is no explanation that makes this okay. You looked at me and decided I wasn't worthy of basic respect. You never asked my name, never considered that I might belong here." He leaned forward, his hands on the table. "Not just as a customer, but as your employer." The room was completely silent now. Someone's phone buzzed and they frantically silenced it. "But there's more," Lisa spoke up, opening a folder. "We've also discovered financial irregularities. Inflated supplier costs, questionable expenses, payments that don't quite add up." She slid papers across the table to the manager. Your management has been problematic in more ways than one. The manager's face went pale again. His hands trembled as he looked at the documents. His mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. Raymond straightened up. Here's what's going to happen. You, he pointed at the manager, are not fired. Not yet. Confusion rippled through the room. The manager looked up, hope flickering in his eyes. You're going to stay for 2 weeks, Raymond continued. You're going to help with the transition. And you're going to watch as we rebuild this place into what it should have been all along. He turned to the assistant manager. Patricia, you're now the interim general manager. He reports to you. Patricia's eyes went wide. The manager's hope died, replaced by something worse than being fired. Humiliation. He would have to stay and watch his empire crumble, working under someone he'd considered beneath him. For the rest of you, Raymond addressed the room, I'm giving you a choice. We're going to change everything about how this place operates. We're going to build a business based on respect, on opportunity, on treating every customer like they matter. If you can't get on board with that, there's the door. But if you stay, you're going to be part of something better. He let that sink in for a moment. We start today. This afternoon, we begin mandatory training on bias and discrimination. Next week, we overhaul our hiring practices. This business is going to reflect the community it serves. Raymond gathered his papers, preparing to leave, but he stopped at the door and looked back at the manager one more time. You know what the saddest part is? If you'd just treated me with basic human decency, if you'd just seen me as a person instead of making assumptions, you'd still have your career. You did this to yourself. The door closed behind him, leaving the room in stunned silence. Through the glass walls, Raymond could see the manager's shoulders shaking. Whether from anger or shame or fear, he didn't know and didn't care. The transformation of Diamond Auto Gallery had officially begun. The changes started immediately. That same afternoon, Raymond brought in a consultant named Dr. Helen Foster who specialized in workplace diversity. She didn't waste time with pleasantries. For 3 hours, she walked the entire staff through scenarios, showing them their own biases, making them uncomfortable in all the right ways. Raymond watched from the back of the room as people squirmed in their seats. Some genuinely seemed to be learning. Others looked defensive, arms crossed, faces tight. And in the corner, the former manager sat with Patricia standing nearby, watching his old kingdom being dismantled piece by piece. By the end of the week, 3 senior salespeople had quit. They didn't like the new direction, didn't want to change their ways. Raymond let them go without a fight. We're building something better, he told the remaining staff. And that starts with people who actually want to be better. The real transformation, though, came in the hiring. Raymond didn't just want to fill positions. He wanted to find talent that had been overlooked, people who'd been told they didn't belong in places like this. One of his first calls was to the service department. There was a guy named Tony who'd been working there for 3 years. Tony knew everything about luxury cars, could diagnose problems just by listening to the engine, could explain complex mechanics in simple terms. But he'd applied for sales positions twice and been rejected both times without even getting an interview. Raymond brought Tony into his office. Tony looked nervous, like he was expecting bad news. I've been looking at your employee file, Raymond said. You've got great reviews from customers, you know these cars inside and out, and you've asked about moving to sales. Tony nodded slowly. Yeah, but I guess I'm not what they're looking for in a salesperson. What do you think they were looking for? Tony hesitated, then shrugged. Someone who looks the part, I guess. Raymond leaned forward. Here's what I'm looking for. Someone who's honest. Someone who knows the product. Someone who treats people with respect. You interested in sales? Tony's face lit up. Are you serious? Dead serious. You start Monday. But I'm warning you, I'm going to hold you to a high standard. You're going to represent what this place is becoming. Tony practically floated out of the office. And he wasn't the only one. Raymond promoted 2 people from the service department, both of whom had been passed over for years despite their qualifications. Then Raymond did something that really shook things up. He hired someone from outside. Her name was Keisha, and she had an MBA from a top business school. She'd interviewed at Diamond Auto Gallery a year ago for a finance position and been told she wasn't quite what they were looking for. Now, Raymond brought her in as the new finance director. Keisha walked through the showroom on her first day with her head high. and Raymond noticed how some of the old staff watched her with barely concealed resentment. But he also noticed how some of the younger employees looked at her with something like hope. The physical space changed too. Raymond commissioned local artists to create pieces that reflected the whole community. A stunning mural went up in the main showroom, showing the city's diverse neighborhoods. Photography from local creators, Black, Hispanic, Asian, White, lined the hallways. The showroom stopped feeling like an exclusive club and started feeling like a place that belonged to everyone. But Raymond's biggest move was creating a community program. Every Saturday morning, Diamond Auto Gallery hosted free workshops for young people interested in the automotive industry. They learned about sales, finance, mechanics, business management. Kids from neighborhoods that would never have stepped foot in that showroom now had a reason to be there. Through all of this, the former manager watched. He showed up every day, worked under Patricia's supervision, and saw everything he'd built being torn down and rebuilt into something he didn't recognize. Raymond made sure of it. One afternoon, Raymond found the former manager standing alone in the showroom, staring at the new mural. "Hard to watch, isn't it?" Raymond said, walking up beside him. The former manager didn't answer right away. Finally, he spoke, his voice tired. "I convinced myself I was protecting the business, that I was maintaining standards." "You were maintaining barriers," Raymond said, "and calling them standards. I know that now." The former manager turned to face him. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry. Not because I got caught, because I was wrong." Raymond studied him for a long moment. "You know what's sad? You could have been part of something good. You had 15 years to build this place into something that mattered. Instead, you built walls." The former manager's last day came on a Friday. He packed up his office quietly. No farewell party, no celebration. Most of the staff barely acknowledged him. He'd been there 15 years, and he left with nothing but a box of personal items and the weight of his own choices. Raymond didn't gloat. He just watched from his office window as the former manager drove away. There was no satisfaction in it, just a quiet sense that justice had been served. But not everything went smoothly. Some longtime customers complained about the changes. One guy actually called to say he was taking his business elsewhere because the showroom didn't feel the same anymore. "We're attracting the wrong element," the customer said on the phone. Raymond kept his voice calm. "Sir, we're attracting everyone who wants to buy a quality car and be treated with respect. If that's not what you're looking for, then you're right. We're probably not the place for you anymore." The customer hung up, angry. Raymond didn't care. For every customer like that who left, 2 new ones came in. People who'd felt unwelcome before now brought their friends and family. Word spread through communities that had been shut out for years. Diamond Auto Gallery had changed, and everyone really was welcome now. 6 weeks after Raymond's revelation, sales had actually increased. Not despite the changes, but because of them. Tony became one of the top salespeople in his second month. His approach was different. Honest, knowledgeable, never pushy. Customers trusted him. Keisha restructured the finance department and created programs that made luxury cars accessible to more qualified buyers without cutting into profits. Patricia thrived as general manager. She led with fairness and clear expectations. The culture shifted from one of exclusion to one of excellence through inclusion. One evening, Raymond stood in the showroom after hours, looking at the new mural, the diverse faces of his staff visible through the office windows. His phone buzzed with a message from Lisa. "Local news wants to do a story on the transformation. Interested?" Raymond thought about it. Part of him wanted to stay quiet, let the work speak for itself. But another part knew that stories like this mattered, that other business owners needed to see that change was possible. That doing the right thing could also be good business. He typed back, "Let's do it." The story of what happened at Diamond Auto Gallery was about to reach far beyond its glass walls, and Raymond was ready to show the world that businesses built on respect and opportunity didn't just survive, they thrived. 6 months after that humiliating day when Raymond was escorted out of his own dealership, Diamond Auto Gallery looked like a completely different place, not just in appearance but in spirit. The showroom buzzed with energy that felt genuine, not forced. Customers of all backgrounds walked through those glass doors knowing they'd be treated with respect. Raymond stood by the window of his office, watching the floor below. Tony was helping a young couple pick out their first luxury car. The woman's eyes sparkled with excitement as Tony explained the features, patient and thorough. Raymond recognized that look, the same excitement he'd felt years ago when he'd bought his first nice car, back when he was still building his empire one property at a time. The transformation hadn't stopped at Diamond Auto Gallery. Raymond's story had gone viral after the local news piece aired. Business magazines picked it up. National news outlets called for interviews. Suddenly, everyone wanted to know about the man who'd been kicked out of his own dealership and turned it into a model for inclusive business practices. But Raymond wasn't interested in fame. He was interested in impact. He used his platform to speak at business conferences, challenging other owners to examine their own practices. He asked uncomfortable questions. How diverse is your leadership team? When was the last time you looked at your customer demographics? Are you building a business or building barriers? Some people didn't want to hear it. They got defensive, made excuses, but others listened. Raymond started getting calls from business owners across the country, asking for advice on how to make their companies more inclusive. He connected them with consultants, shared his playbook, and didn't charge a dime for the help. His investment portfolio grew too. He started putting money into minority-owned businesses, helping entrepreneurs who reminded him of his younger self, full of talent and drive, but constantly hitting closed doors. He became known not just for his success, but for lifting others as he climbed. One Saturday morning, Raymond came in for the community workshop they now held every week. The showroom had been transformed into a classroom. 20 teenagers sat in chairs arranged in a semicircle, notebooks open, faces eager. These kids came from neighborhoods all over the city, some wealthy, most not. Some had parents who drove luxury cars, others came from families who took the bus. But here, in this space, none of that mattered. They were all just kids interested in learning about business. Keisha was leading today's session on finance and budgeting. Raymond watched from the back as she broke down complex concepts into simple terms, making these kids understand that luxury cars weren't just about money. They were about planning, saving, and making smart decisions. After the workshop, a young man named James approached Raymond. James had been coming for 3 months, never missed a Saturday. He was 17, quiet, always taking notes. "Mr. Mitchell," James said, nervous. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course. How did you know you could do this? Build businesses, buy places like this? He hesitated. How did you know people would let you?" Raymond understood the real question. James wasn't asking about business strategy. He was asking something deeper, about believing in yourself when the world keeps telling you that you don't belong. "I didn't wait for permission," Raymond said simply. "And I didn't wait for people to let me. I just did the work, made myself undeniable, and refused to accept other people's limitations on what I could achieve." He put a hand on James's shoulder. "You don't need anyone to let you succeed. You just need to decide you're going to do it and then put in the work." James nodded, something shifting in his eyes. Raymond recognized that look too. He'd seen it in his own mirror years ago. The news kept getting better. Diamond Auto Gallery's sales had increased by 40% over 6 months. The dealership won an award for community engagement. They'd become the top-rated luxury dealer in the region, not just for their cars, but for their customer service. Online reviews told the story. People felt welcomed, respected, treated fairly. Tony had become the top salesperson 3 months running. His success wasn't about pressure or tricks. It was about genuine care and knowledge. Patricia was thriving as general manager, and the staff under her leadership reflected the community they served. But the real measure of success came in smaller moments. Raymond watched a black family walk through those doors one afternoon, and instead of being followed by security or questioned about whether they could afford anything, they were greeted with the same warmth as every other customer. The father actually teared up a bit as he signed the papers on a new sedan. He pulled Raymond aside afterward. 10 years ago, I came here to look at cars," the man said quietly. "They treated me like I was planning to steal something. Today I came back with my family and everything was different. Thank you for that." Those moments made everything worth it, every difficult conversation, every hard decision, every person who'd criticized him for making it about race when he was just trying to make it about respect. Raymond's phone rang one afternoon with a number he didn't recognize. When he answered, the voice on the other end was hesitant, uncertain. Mr. Mitchell? This is Andrew. I used to manage Diamond Auto Gallery. Raymond hadn't heard from the former manager since he'd left 6 months ago. He'd wondered occasionally what happened to him but never reached out. I'm calling because... Andrew paused. I wanted you to know I've been doing a lot of thinking about what I did, how I treated people. I've been volunteering at a community center trying to, I don't know, make up for some of the damage I caused. His voice cracked slightly. I can't undo what I did. But I wanted you to know that I'm trying to be better. Raymond was quiet for a moment. That's good, Andrew. That's really good. I don't expect forgiveness or anything. I needed you to know that what happened changed me. I see things differently now. They talked for a few more minutes, then said goodbye. Raymond hung up feeling something he didn't expect. Hope. Not everyone who made mistakes wanted to change, but some did, and maybe that mattered. That evening, Raymond stood in the empty showroom after everyone had gone home. The lights reflected off the polished cars and the city lights twinkled through the massive windows. He thought about that day 6 months ago when he'd been escorted out of this building, humiliated in front of strangers. At the time, it had felt like the worst thing that could happen. But now, looking at what Diamond Auto Gallery had become, at the lives that had been changed, at the doors that had been opened, he realized that moment of humiliation had been a gift in disguise. It had given him clarity, purpose, mission bigger than just making money. Raymond pulled out his phone and looked at a photo from that day's workshop 20. Kids of all backgrounds sitting together, learning, dreaming, believing that success was possible for them too. On his office wall, he'd hung a simple plaque with words that had become his guiding principle. Excellence has no color. Opportunity should have no barriers. Diamond Auto Gallery had become more than a business. It had become proof that when you tear down walls and build bridges instead, everyone rises. The customers who'd been shut out now had somewhere to go. The employees who'd been overlooked now had careers. The kids who'd never imagined working in a place like this now had role models who looked like them. And Raymond, who'd been judged unworthy of basic respect, had turned that moment of rejection into a movement of change. The glass doors that had closed behind him in shame now opened wide for everyone. And that, Raymond thought as he locked up for the night, was the truest measure of success. Not what you achieve for yourself, but what you make possible for others. The lights of Diamond Auto Gallery went dark, but the impact of what had been built there would shine for years to come.